What happens when a man becomes famous not because people fear him, envy him, or worship him from a distance, but because they trust him? That was the strange power of Lee Seung-gi. He did not enter Korean entertainment like a rebel. He did not build his name on danger, arrogance, or scandal. He arrived with a schoolboy face, a clean voice, and the kind of smile that made mothers approve before teenagers even screamed. In an industry obsessed with perfection, Lee Seung-gi's brand was something rarer: sincerity. He was young when the public first met him, almost too young to understand how quickly affection can become ownership. His early image was simple but powerful: a good student, a respectful son, a polite singer. The kind of celebrity who looked like he still remembered to bow lower than necessary, laugh at himself, and act grateful even when the spotlight was clearly built for him. And Korea loved that. They did not just listen to his songs, they adopted him emotionally. He was not only a singer with ballads people could replay after heartbreak. He became the boy next door who somehow grew up on national television. Variety shows made him familiar, dramas made him romantic, interviews made him safe. Every career move added another layer to the same image. Lee Seung-gi was dependable. That word matters: dependable. Not the flashiest, not the most mysterious, not the most dangerous, dependable. In showbiz, where stars rise fast and fall faster, dependability can become its own kind of luxury. Audiences felt they knew what they were getting from him: warmth, humor, respect, a clean face untouched by chaos. But there was always something dangerous hidden inside that love. Because when the public calls someone good, they stop treating it like a compliment and start treating it like a contract. Lee Seung-gi was no longer just allowed to be talented. He had to be morally comforting. He had to make people feel that their trust had been placed in the right man. Every smile had to stay clean. Every choice had to make sense. Every relationship, every company tie, every private decision could one day be judged against the impossible image people had built around him. And for years, he survived that pressure beautifully. He crossed from music into acting, from acting into variety, from variety into national recognition. He became one of those rare Korean celebrities who could move between generations without feeling out of place. Older viewers liked him, younger viewers knew him, producers trusted him. Brands understood him. He was not just famous, he was approved. But approval is not freedom. It is a polished room with invisible walls. And Lee Seung-gi's story becomes interesting not because he was secretly dark, not because he was waiting to betray the image, but because the image itself became too heavy. The good boy grew up. The public kept watching. And eventually, the cleanest man in the room would find himself surrounded by money disputes, family controversy, and a question Korea did not want to ask: was Lee Seung-gi ever allowed to stop being perfect? If Lee Seung-gi's early fame was built on trust, his peak years were built on something even harder to manufacture: familiarity. He was everywhere, but rarely in a way that felt exhausting. That was the trick. Some celebrities become famous by creating distance. Lee Seung-gi became famous by walking into living rooms and making the distance disappear. This is why choosing one defining work for him is not as simple as naming one drama. For some stars, the answer is obvious: one role, one scene, one viral kiss, one poster that becomes history. But Lee Seung-gi's real masterpiece was not only a character, it was a relationship with the audience, built across music stages, variety chaos, romantic dramas, and the quiet rhythm of people seeing him again and again until he felt less like a celebrity and more like a familiar presence. Still, if there is one screen image that helped modernize his public identity, it is Vagabond. In Vagabond, Lee Seung-gi was no longer just the nation's polite younger brother. He was not the soft ballad singer standing under gentle lights. He was running, bleeding, shouting, chasing truth through explosions and betrayal. The drama gave him a harder silhouette. Action hero, grieving uncle, desperate man, someone angry enough to break the clean frame around him. And that mattered, because audiences had known Lee Seung-gi as safe for so long that danger on him felt new. Watching him throw himself into a conspiracy thriller felt like watching the good boy finally enter a world too ugly for manners. His character, Cha Dal-gun, was not elegant in pain. He was messy, furious, obsessed. He carried grief like a weapon, not a melody. That role expanded him. It told viewers that Lee Seung-gi could do more than charm them. He could sweat, rage, collapse, and still hold the center of the screen. He could step outside the warm national image without completely losing it. The audience did not reject the shift because the core of him was still there. Sincerity. Even as an action lead, he did not feel like a man performing masculinity for applause. He felt like someone fighting because he had no other way to breathe. But Vagabond also exposed the contradiction of his career. No matter how intense the role became, Lee Seung-gi's public image followed him into it. The audience still saw the dependable man underneath the action. That was his blessing and his curse. He could take risks, but the public often translated those risks through the same old language: good, honest, hardworking, clean. Imagine being so trusted that even your anger looks respectable. That is not a small thing. It is branding at its most powerful. It means the public has decided what your emotions are allowed to mean before you even show them. During these peak years, Lee Seung-gi became a rare hybrid in Korean entertainment. He was a singer people remembered, an actor people followed, a variety figure people welcomed, and a celebrity families could still approve of. He did not belong to only one category, and that made him harder to replace. He was not just selling talent, he was selling continuity. A promise that the boy they trusted had grown up, but not changed too much. And maybe that was the real peak. Not the awards, not the ratings, not the applause, but the illusion that Lee Seung-gi could evolve without disappointing anyone. Because the higher that illusion climbed, the more brutal the fall would feel when real life finally interrupted the story. The crack did not begin with a crime scene. It began with accounting. And somehow that made it feel more personal. For years, Lee Seung-gi had been sold to the public as the good man of Korean entertainment, the obedient student, the hard-working singer, the respectful variety star, the actor who smiled like he still believed gratitude could protect him. His image was not built on rebellion, so when the controversy came, it did not look like a celebrity being exposed for reckless behavior. It looked like the good boy realizing the adults around him may have been counting his money while he was counting his blessings. The dispute with Hook Entertainment turned Lee Seung-gi's clean career into something colder. According to the conflict that exploded publicly, he questioned years of music revenue and whether he had been properly paid for his work as a singer. The numbers became headlines. The company statements came. Legal action followed. Suddenly, the man who had spent so much of his career appearing polite and loyal was standing in the middle of a battle about contracts, trust, and betrayal. And that word, betrayal, changed everything. Because this was not only about money, not really. Money was the object, but trust was the wound. Lee Seung-gi had spent nearly 2 decades inside a system that benefited from his image. His good manners, his clean reputation, his willingness to work across music, drama, and variety, all of it helped create a brand that audiences loved and companies could profit from. So when the payment dispute became public, many people did not see him as greedy. They saw him as used. That is what made the story so powerful. It flipped the usual celebrity scandal upside down. Instead of the public asking, "What did he do wrong?" many were asking, how much was taken from him while he stayed quiet? For a moment, Lee Seung-gi's good boy image did not collapse. It became tragic. His silence looked less like privilege and more like conditioning. His loyalty looked less like kindness and more like something the industry had exploited. The star who had always seemed protected suddenly looked painfully alone. But fame never allows one clean narrative for long. Just as the public seemed ready to turn him into a symbol of a mistreated artist fighting back, another storm arrived: his marriage to Lee Da-in. On paper, marriage should have been a happy chapter, a grown man building a life, a celebrity choosing love after years of being watched. But the reaction was not simple, because Lee Da-in's family had already been surrounded by financial controversy in the public eye. And suddenly, Lee Seung-gi was no longer only the victim of one industry battle. He was also the husband of someone whose family history made people uncomfortable. The backlash was harsh. Some fans felt disappointed, some questioned his judgment, some wondered how the nation's trusted good man could connect his life to a family associated with financial scandal. To be clear, the controversy was not the same as saying Lee Seung-gi committed those wrongs himself, but in the court of public opinion, proximity can become punishment. That was the cruel twist. After fighting one story where people saw him as betrayed, he walked into another where people asked whether he had betrayed the image they loved. Was he still the good man? Was he naive? Was he stubborn? Was the public unfair for judging his marriage? Or had his own perfect image made that judgment inevitable? Lee Seung-gi's scandal era was never simple because it was not one explosion. It was a chain reaction: money, loyalty, marriage, family, reputation, and somewhere inside all of it stood a man who had spent his life being trusted, finally learning how quickly trust can turn into interrogation. Today, Lee Seung-gi does not look like a man who fell. He looks like a man who survived being rewritten. That is a very different kind of story. A fallen star is simple. The public points to one mistake, one scandal, one ugly moment, and says, that is where it ended. But Lee Seung-gi's image did not break in one clean line. It bent, it twisted. It was dragged through courtrooms, company statements, marriage backlash, family headlines, fan disappointment, public sympathy, and the strange exhaustion that comes when a celebrity becomes a debate instead of a person. And still, he is here. That may be the most interesting part. Lee Seung-gi was not erased. He was not pushed out of the industry completely. He continued working, continued appearing, continued carrying the same name that once meant national comfort. But the meaning of that name changed. Before, Lee Seung-gi sounded like safety. Now it sounds more complicated: resilience, stubbornness, bruised trust, and a man trying to live after the public stopped seeing him as untouchable. His legal victory against his former agency gave him back part of the narrative. It made him look less like a celebrity fighting over money and more like an artist demanding that years of labor be recognized. For many people, that battle strengthened him. It turned the good boy into something older, sharper, less innocent. He was no longer just the polite entertainer smiling through every room. He became a reminder that even the most trusted faces in showbiz can be trapped inside unfair systems. But the marriage backlash did not disappear. That is the shadow still attached to his current image. To some fans, his decision to marry Lee Da-in was private, human, and nobody else's business. To others, it became a moral test he failed simply by association. The controversy around her family made people question his judgment. And in 2025, when he and his wife publicly moved to cut ties with her side of the family, it felt less like a romantic ending and more like damage control in real time. That is where Lee Seung-gi stands now, not destroyed, but no longer protected by automatic trust. He is still loved by many, but the love is less innocent. Fans defend him harder now because they know the public will not do it for them. Viewers who once accepted him easily now watch him with more caution. Every move feels heavier. Every statement sounds more strategic. Even his happiness can become suspicious to people who feel they once owned a cleaner version of him. And maybe that is the real tragedy of the good boy image. It does not allow aging. It does not allow messy love. It does not allow complicated family ties, business wars, anger, pride, or mistakes. It asks a grown man to remain emotionally available to strangers forever, smiling inside the same pure frame he entered as a young singer. But Lee Seung-gi is not that boy anymore. He is a husband, a father, an artist with scars, a man who learned that being trusted by everyone can become another kind of prison. His current chapter is not about becoming perfect again. That version is gone. The real question is whether audiences can accept a Lee Seung-gi who is still good but no longer simple. Because perfection made him famous, but imperfection may be the only thing that finally makes him real.